Long before our world looked anything like it does today, people lived through an age defined by strange weather, rising fear, and signs that were simply too big to ignore. Civilizations across different continents, separated by vast oceans and towering mountains, all told stories about a giant flood that reshaped the earth. These stories weren't just from one culture or one region. They came from mountains, deserts, jungles, and remote islands. When you hear the same warning again and again from people who never met each other, the question becomes very simple. What were they trying to tell us? Archaeologists and historians have spent decades, even centuries, studying these accounts. The deeper they dug, the more they realized that the ancient world left behind a trail of clues, breadcrumbs hinting at what life was like before the flood. These clues come from intricately carved stones, ancient clay tablets, cities buried deep beneath the earth, and sudden geological scars that still sit visible in the landscape today. These artifacts don't just describe a tragedy, they describe a world teetering on the edge of collapse. The first significant sign appears in Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, where some of the oldest writing in human history reveals a deep-seated fear of rising waters. Clay tablets, etched thousands of years ago, speak of rivers swelling far beyond their banks, storms that raged for weeks on end, and farmers forced to abandon their lands because the once fertile soil turned to thick, cracked salt. It wasn't one single disaster. It was a chain reaction, a domino effect of calamities. At the very same time, legends from the Mediterranean describe the sky that stayed dark for days, sometimes even weeks at a time. Scientists now believe these stories could be directly connected to massive volcanic eruptions that shattered the atmosphere, spewing ash and gas high into the stratosphere. A single large eruption can dramatically change weather patterns across the entire world. But what happens when you have several of them? You get a climate that becomes dangerously unpredictable and incredibly harsh. Heavy, relentless rain falls in places that were normally dry, and snow and ice melt in places that were usually locked in a deep freeze. And when the weather changes that fast, water levels rise. But it wasn't just about floods. The accounts also point to something happening in the sky. Ancient Chinese texts describe a time when 10 suns appeared in the sky, scorching the earth and drying up rivers. While this sounds like pure myth, some researchers propose it could be a fragmented memory of a meteor shower or a comet breaking apart in the atmosphere. Imagine looking up and seeing the sky filled with fiery objects. The heat would have been intense, causing widespread fires and further destabilizing the climate. When these fireballs finally hit the earth, they would have created massive tsunamis if they landed in the ocean, or thrown up enough dust to block out the sun if they hit land. Either way, the result is catastrophic. Then, there are the geological clues. In the Black Sea region, scientists discovered evidence of a massive, sudden flood around 7,500 years ago. It wasn't a slow rise in sea level, it was a wall of water. The Mediterranean Sea, swollen by melting glaciers, breached a natural dam at the Bosporus Strait and poured into the Black Sea basin with the force of 200 Niagara Falls. The water level rose by several hundred feet, submerging vast areas of land that were once home to thriving communities. People would have had to flee with only what they could carry, their villages and farms vanishing beneath the waves in a matter of months, or even weeks. This event would have been etched into the collective memory of the survivors, passed down through generations as a story of divine punishment and a world washed clean. Across the globe, in the Andes Mountains of South America, we find another piece of the puzzle. The ancient city of Tiahuanaco sits at an altitude of 13,000 feet, but its port structures are strangely positioned, suggesting the shoreline of Lake Titicaca was once much higher. Legends in the region speak of a great flood sent by the creator god Viracocha to destroy a race of giants who had grown arrogant. After the flood, Viracocha created new humans from stone. Could these legends be a folk memory of a dramatic climate shift that caused the lake to rise and fall, reshaping the world for the people who lived there? The evidence suggests that something big happened, something that forced people to completely rethink their relationship with the environment. What connects all these stories from Mesopotamia to China to the Andes? The idea of a before time, a lost golden age, or a world that was simply different. The flood marks a dividing line in human history, separating the modern world from a forgotten past. The stories aren't just about destruction, they're about survival and rebirth. In almost every account, a small group of people is chosen or manages to survive the catastrophe. Noah builds an ark, Manu, in India, is warned by a fish, and Utnapishtim, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, builds a great ship to save his family and the seeds of all living things. These survivors carry with them the knowledge and culture of the old world, becoming the founders of a new one. This theme of survival is crucial. It tells us that our ancestors didn't just see the flood as an ending. They saw it as a new beginning, a chance to rebuild. The warnings embedded in these myths are not just about impending doom. They are a manual for resilience. They teach about paying attention to the signs, about the importance of community, and about having the wisdom to act before it's too late. The stories carry a powerful message. Nature is a force far greater than humanity, and when the world starts sending warnings, we need to listen. So, when we look at these ancient flood myths, we're not just looking at fantasy or superstition. We're looking at a global collection of eyewitness accounts, filtered through thousands of years of storytelling. They are a testament to the real-life struggles of our ancestors who faced a world in turmoil. The rising waters, the darkened skies, the fiery objects from above, these were not just elements of a scary story. They were the lived reality for people who watched their world disappear. The evidence, both written and geological, paints a consistent picture. The Earth went through a period of extreme climate instability, whether it was caused by volcanoes, cosmic impacts, or the end of the last ice age. The result was the same: catastrophic flooding on a global scale. The people who lived through it did the only thing they could. They remembered, they told their children, and their children told theirs. They carved the warnings into stone and pressed them into clay, hoping that future generations would understand. And today, we are that future generation. As our own climate becomes more unpredictable, as sea levels rise and storms grow more intense.
Have you ever wondered if the ancient stories of a great flood were more than just myths? What if they were memories carved into stone and passed down through generations as a warning? Let's start in South America. High in the Andes, ancient people carved strange symbols into rock walls. One image keeps showing up: a massive wave taller than a house, looming over a village. This wasn't just a random doodle. Archaeologists digging below these carvings found a layer of chaos-shaded pottery, the scattered bones of farm animals, and dark soil packed with ocean sediment. It's clear that something unimaginably powerful swept through this valley, and the survivors wanted to make sure no one ever forgot. Now, let's travel across the globe to Australia. For thousands of years, Aboriginal elders have told stories of the sea swallowing their ancestral hunting grounds. They even describe the specific paths the water took as it rose. For a long time, these were dismissed as simple myths. But modern coastal mapping has revealed something astonishing. The paths described in the stories perfectly match ancient coastlines that disappeared beneath the waves thousands of years ago. Their stories weren't just legends. They were eyewitness accounts. The mysteries don't stop there. Off the coast of India, near the modern city of Dwarka, divers discovered the ruins of a lost city submerged under the ocean. What they found was mind-blowing. Stone structures laid out in neat lines, remnants of walls, and patterns that look exactly like streets. It points to a large, organized settlement that was thriving before the sea claimed it. What could have caused an entire city to sink beneath the waves? Further north, the Black Sea holds another piece of the puzzle. Core samples taken from the seabed tell a story of a sudden and violent event around 7,500 years ago. A torrent of salt water from the Mediterranean Sea burst through a natural dam, flooding the basin. This wasn't a gradual rise. It was a catastrophic deluge, so fast and brutal that entire villages would have been wiped off the map in a matter of days. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the massive stone structures left behind by our ancestors. Think of the giant megaliths and precisely built walls that weigh many tons. What's so strange is that many of these ancient sites show clear signs of water erosion far, far above any modern floodlines. It's as if a wall of water once reached heights that seem impossible to us today. So what connects all these scattered clues from around the world? Scientists now believe they all point back to one colossal event, the end of the last ice age. When the planet warmed, the gigantic glaciers that covered much of the Earth began to melt. We're not talking about a gentle trickle. Some of these ice sheets were larger than entire countries. When they collapsed, they released unbelievable amounts of meltwater in a very short time. Imagine a dam the size of a continent bursting. These events triggered what are known as megafloods. Walls of water capable of tearing through forests, carving out canyons, and dragging entire towns away. These cataclysmic floods would have been global, affecting coastlines and river valleys all over the world. It's very likely that these are the real events that inspired the universal stories of a great flood. The people who lived before these catastrophes didn't have satellites or the internet to warn them, but they were incredibly observant. They watched the sky, the rivers, and the seasons. They would have noticed the patterns changing. Maybe the air felt different, thicker. The storms grew louder and more frequent. Animals they relied on for food might have started migrating at strange times or disappeared altogether. Across the ancient world, leaders, priests, and shamans would have tried to understand these ominous signs. Some drew maps on stone, like the wave carvings in the Andes. Others may have built ceremonial mounds as a plea to the heavens. A few, the wisest among them, probably warned their people to move to higher ground. But for most, the scale of what was coming was simply beyond comprehension. What makes this period of history so fascinating isn't just the destruction that followed, but the chilling tension that must have built up beforehand. Imagine living in a world where the horizon looks a little different each year, where the water level creeps up, slowly but surely. Imagine your elders telling you stories about a time this happened before, long ago. This was the reality for ancient people, and even though we're separated from them by thousands of years, their warnings have managed to reach us. They are written in the ruins they left behind, in the stories passed down through countless generations, and in the very land itself. They didn't know how to stop what was coming. Their only hope. You ever wonder why almost every ancient culture has a great flood story? It's not a coincidence. Long before our history books were written, the world was changing in ways that would have felt like the apocalypse. As the last ice age ended, nature started acting strange. The rains got heavier, the seasons went haywire, and massive glaciers, frozen for millennia, began to sweat. People knew something was wrong, but they couldn't grasp the scale. The Earth itself was becoming unstable. The first big clue for modern scientists came from deep within the ice of Greenland and Antarctica. By drilling ice cores, we can look back in time over 100,000 years. Trapped inside that ice are tiny air bubbles, a perfect snapshot of the ancient atmosphere. And what they show is startling. Right before those flood stories start popping up everywhere, there was a sudden, dramatic spike in global temperature. When the planet heats up fast, ice melts even faster. All that water had to go somewhere, and it all flowed into one place. The ocean. At first, it was a slow creep. Coastlines shifted, beaches moved inland, and low-lying villages were quietly swallowed by the sea. But the real terror came from what scientists call meltwater pulses. Imagine a gigantic ice dam holding back a lake the size of a country, suddenly collapsing. This wasn't a slow rise. It was a catastrophic surge of water released in just days or weeks. This is exactly what the ancient stories describe. In the Middle East, texts speak of waters that rose without mercy. Indigenous stories from North America talk about a thunder that wasn't thunder, followed by a wall of water tearing through the forests. In Southeast Asia, legends recall entire islands sinking beneath the waves. It's not just stories either. Archaeologists find the evidence. In Turkey and Syria, ancient settlements are buried under thick layers of mud and seashells. In the Americas, you can still trace the paths of ancient megafloods across landscapes that are now bone dry. To make things even more chaotic, there's evidence of meteor impacts around the same time. Geologists have found thin layers of earth containing tiny glass fragments, the kind formed when a cosmic impact superheats sand. An event like that could have triggered massive fires, accelerated ice melt, and whipped up unimaginably violent storms, pouring even more water into the system. Faced with this, people did what we always do. They tried to survive. Some fled to the mountains, others built stronger homes. And yes, some built boats, not for a worldwide flood, but because local floods were becoming an everyday nightmare. Along the coasts, fishermen would have watched the tides creep higher each year, marking the new waterlines on rocks. Farmers saw their fields turn into salty marshes. Freshwater wells were poisoned by the encroaching sea. This forced entire communities to move. They packed up and headed inland, carrying with them the traumatic memories of the rising water. These migrations are how the stories spread, passed down from one generation to the next, evolving from a local catastrophe into the epic legends of a world drowned and reborn. Have you ever wondered if the great flood myths from around the world are more than just stories? What if they were memories of a real global catastrophe? Science is now uncovering evidence that suggests our ancestors might have witnessed something truly terrifying. Let's start in the Near East. Geological surveys along the Tigris and Euphrates rivers show signs of a colossal flood, far bigger than any normal river overflow. This massive event destroyed ancient towns and left behind thick layers of sediment, which could explain why stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh focus on a single, overwhelming disaster. Over in China, the legendary Great Flood seems to match a real event. Scientists have found evidence of a huge landslide that dammed a major river. When this natural dam eventually burst, it unleashed a cataclysmic torrent of water across the plains. It's one of the most direct links we have between a myth and a confirmed geological event. In Europe, the story is written in underwater caves. Prehistoric paintings in caves along the Mediterranean coast show animals drawn high above today's sea level. These caves are now filled with ocean sediment, a silent testament to how much the waters have risen since our ancestors lived there. But the most incredible evidence lies in sunken cities. Off the coast of Greece, the Bronze Age town of Pavlopetri sits almost perfectly preserved on the seabed, complete with roads and buildings. It was abandoned suddenly, likely due to a combination of earthquakes and rising waters. Then there's the mysterious Yonaguni Monument in Japan, a series of massive terraced stone formations deep underwater. While some debate if they're natural or man-made, they're a powerful reminder of how coastlines have changed. South Indian legends also speak of a lost land called Kumari Kandam, swallowed by the ocean. Modern coastal studies confirm that this region has indeed lost significant land to the sea over millennia. So, what caused all this? Before the floods, the world was heating up. Soil samples from that time show pollen from warm climate plants, meaning temperatures rose enough to shift entire ecosystems. Rainfall patterns changed, rivers carved new paths, and animals began migrating or disappearing. Ancient people noticed they didn't have climate models, but they had instinct. They felt the world changing, and they knew something was coming. When the water finally arrived, it may have been a combination of events: rapid ice melt, a chain of superstorms, or even volcanic activity. Whatever the trigger, it was powerful enough to leave a mark on every continent. Survivors carried their stories with them, passing them down through generations until they became the myths we know today. These weren't just imagined tales. They were memories of a real disaster, a universal warning. Today, modern science, from ice cores to underwater archaeology, is confirming what our ancestors tried to tell us. The Great Flood wasn't just a story. They experienced it, and they left us a message carved in stone and buried under the waves. When the world changes too fast, water is the ultimate threat. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more journeys into our hidden past.